What's good, people? Tunji again from Ceasar Graphics. Welcome to my channel. If you're new, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and remember to ring the bell so you will be notified when I post my tutorials. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make this poster that I got inspiration from the Bible. And without any further ado, let's jump into today's tutorial. So let's create a new document. So for this project, I'm going to use the normal frame size I use for movie posters. So I'm going to use the 900 by 1125. Okay, and I'm going to change my resolution to 120. Okay, and I'm going to call this man, and I'm going to hit the create button. I'm going to first bring in my background. So I'm going to be putting the link to this exercise file in the description section below. So I'm going to scale this big like so, and I'm going to push this out a little bit just like so. And the next thing I'll do is to bring in the picture of my character, which is this. So I'm going to hold down Alt and drag because I'm using Photoshop CC 2020. So I'm going to position this somewhere around let's say here. All right, so what we're doing now is to convert the skin of our character to look like a sculpture. Okay, so to do that we need to use camera raw. So I'm going to click on filter and select camera raw filter here. I'm going to reduce the texture to -100 like so. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see what I'm doing, and under the details right here I'm going to increase the noise. Now notice what's going to happen when I increase the noise. Now you see we're beginning to see that plastic feel on the skin of our character. So I'm going to move that to about this point like so, and I'm going to hit the OK button down here. Okay, so the next thing I'm doing now is to take out some details from the eye so as to give it that sculpture look. So I'm going to zoom in, all right, and I'm going to make a copy of this. Then I'm going to call this one my backup. This is going to be the image we're going to use to apply the effect. So I'm going to reduce the shadow from the face. So to do that, I'm going to select the brush tool, and I'll make sure I'm on the soft-round brush. My flow is going to be 50, and I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to sample a color. All right, from here, and I'll go back to my brush to reduce the size of my brush, and I'm just going to take out some parts of the shadow. So I'm going to drag the grunge texture and drop like so from the exercise file folder, and I'm going to position this where I want it. So I'm going to zoom out. So I'm going to rasterize this. So I'll right click and select rasterize layer. So the next thing we're going to do is to convert this to black and white. So I'll go to image, adjustment, and select desaturate. I'll change the blend mode of this to soft light. Now as you can see, we are having some issue here where the grunge effect is touching our background, so we need to work on that. But before we do that, I'm going to make a copy of this because I'm going to be applying this separately on the face. So I'm going to hide this one, and for this I'm going to create a marquee of the character by holding down Ctrl and click to create the marquee, and I'm going to hit the add layer mask icon here to take that grunge away from the background. Now you see we have this just only on the body of our character, and select the layer mask of the character, and I'm going to select the brush tool, increase the size of my brush like so. All right, I'm going to zoom in and make sure that your foreground is set to black like mine. But if you don't have yours as black, just click on this box here and choose black here and hit OK. Or you can as well click on this icon here and it will change it to black and white for you to apply the brush to just this part of the face. All right, so I'm going to make this visible again. So I'm going to position this where I want it. I'll do the same thing I did previously. Hold down Ctrl, create a marquee of the character layer, and I'm going to now add a layer mask like so. So now you see it's touching this part of the body, so we need to take that out. So I'm going to select the brush tool, the size of my brush, and just take that out. Okay, this is good. So the next thing I'm going to do is to bring in my rocks. So I'm going to drag this and drop here like so, and I'm going to scale this down. I'm going to rotate this way and position this here, and I'll make a copy of this. And for this one, it needs to be somewhere here. Let's make this go a little bit higher. Make a copy again, just like so. All right, so we need to blend this, so I'm going to zoom in. So for this one, I'm going to add a layer mask, and I'll select the brush tool to the size of my brush. Now make sure this is set to black, and I'm just going to take out some part of the so I'm just going to use the hard brush to just make this smooth, have that hard edges like so. So I'm just going to push this one in and just rotate it a little bit like so. So I'm going to put everything in a group. So I'm going to shift select all the rocks, and I'm going to hit the Ctrl G on my keyboard to put them in the group. I'll call this rocks, and I need to convert this to black and white. So to do that, I'm going to select the black and white adjustment here, and I'll say apply to just only the rock layer, and you see it looks as if the rock and the body of our character like they are together. So I'm going to create a new layer. All right, and I'm going to call this shadow. Okay, because I noticed the light effect from the side of my character is not getting to the rock. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to just sample a color from this side of the body, and I'm going to select the brush tool. So I think this is it here. So I'm going to hold on Control and create the marquee of that rock. So I'm just going to apply the brush to this like so. So I'll change the blend mode to multiply. So I'm just going to randomly pick some sort of so, and I'm going to hit the Ctrl D on my keyboard to deselect, and I'm going to use the eraser tool to just take out some part of the shadow from the background. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to blend it this. So I'm just going to double click here. So I'm just going to move this in like so, and I'm going to hold on Alt to split the slider, and I'm going to move this in, and I'm going to hit OK. So this is the before and this is the after. So this is good. What I'm going to do now is to apply the hair of our character. So I'm going to drag the statues here like so, and I'm going to scale this down about this point, and this should be here. And I'm going to make a copy of this. I'm going to flip this way. All right. So the whole idea is to make the hair of the statue feel the shape of my character's head. So I'm going to make this bigger. I'm going to put the two statue layer in a group. So I'm going to use the shortcut. I'll add a layer mask, and I'll hit the Ctrl I on my keyboard to reverse the selection. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zoom in, and I'll create a selection of the hair of my character. Okay, so I'm going to hit Ctrl Enter to create a marquee of that shape. So since my background color is set to white, so I'm going to use the shortcut, which is Ctrl Backspace. Now you see the layer is now visible. So we need to position this to fill the hair of the character. So I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to increase the size with the free transform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer mask to the first statue. I'll select the brush tool, and I'm going to increase the size of my brush, and I'm just going to take out some part of the statue. I'm going to blend the edges of the mask to the head of the character. So I'm going to select the layer mask of the hair of the statues. I'm going to call this statues. Let's just give it a name. And I'm going to select the brush tool. Make sure you have the layer mask of that layer selected. All right, now we have this. So one other thing that I'm going to do is to take out the hair from my character. I'm going to put the layer of the character in a group. So I'm going to hit Ctrl G, and I'll call this. Now add layer mask to the group, and I'm going to zoom in. Now this time I'm going to use the hair brush, and I'm just going to take out the hair. So I'm going to select the layer mask of the statue group, and I'm just going to randomly unsmooth it. Now make sure your foreground color is set to black when you're doing this. So what I'm going to do is, since the side of the face of my character is dark, so I need to make this place more darker so as to make it blend with the image of the character. So I'm just going to open the group folder, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'll select the brush tool, right? Increase the size of my brush, all right? Make sure that the blend mode of that layer is set to multiply, and I'm going to call this shadow. I'll make sure my foreground is set to black, like so. So I'm going to make sure this is set to white, like so, and I'm going to brush like so. So as you can see, we have the shadow outside the hair of the um, statues. So what we're going to do is we are going to make a duplicate of the layer mask from the statues and apply it to the shadow layer. So to do that, I'm going to hold down Alt, click and drag and drop like so. And so I'm going to reduce the opacity of this little like so, and I'm going to blend this by double clicking here, and I'm going to push from this side to this side, and I'm going to hold down Alt and click to split the slider, and I'll push this back. I'll push this back, so push this in like so. All right, this is not bad, and I'll reduce the opacity just a little. I'll hit OK. We still need to add more shadows, so I'm going to make a copy of this. Double click on the layer to bring out the blend if option, and I'm going to push this back in like so. I'm going to select the brush tool. I'm going to reduce size of my brush, and I'm going to change my flow to 10 like so, and I'll increase it a little bit, and I'm just going to brush out some part of the layer. So I'm going to add more depth to this. All right, so by creating a bond layer, so I'm going to hold down Alt and click on the new layer icon, and I'll call this bond, and I'm going to change this to overlay and click on the fill with overlay neutral color 50% gray option, and I'm going to select OK. Now I'm going to zoom in. All right, I'm going to open the layer of the character like so, and I'm going to hold down Ctrl and click to create the marquee of the layer of the character, and I'll select the bond layer and add a layer mask. All right, so everything I do now will only be on the character. It's not going to affect the background. So I'm going to select the bond tool, so, and I'm going to zoom in. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create a light effect. So I'm going to create a new layer now. So I'm going to change this to color dodge. I'm going to check the fill with color dodge neutral color black option here, and I'm going to select OK. So now I'm going to zoom out with Ctrl minus, and I'm going to select the brush tool. So I'm going to sample a color from this side of my project, and I'm going to increase the brightness a little, and I'm going to select OK. Then I'm going to increase the size of the brush again, and my flow should be something around, let's say, 16. I'm going to hit OK. So I'm going to brush like so, and I'll apply more brush to this. So I'm going to do the same thing again by creating a new light effect layer above all the layers, but this one will just be for my character. And I'll change this to color dodge. Check the same option again, and I'm going to set out OK. And this time I'm going to reduce the size of my brush. So I'm going to make a duplicate of the color bond layer mask by holding on Alt and drag to apply to the light effect layer. Okay, so I don't want this to affect the background. So if I try to brush now, you see my light is only touching my character. So I'm going to increase the size of my brush, and I'm just going to brush like so. All right, now I notice I'm having this dark line around my light effect here, so you need to adjust that. So I'm going to hold on and click to create the marquee of the layer mask of the light effect, and I'm going to go to select, click on modify, and I'll select expand, and I'm going to make this one like so, and I'm going to select OK. So now I'll select the layer of the light effect, and I'm going to hold on control and apply the color of my background, which is white here, by holding control backspace. All right, and I'm going to hit the Ctrl D on my keyboard. Now you see we're beginning to see this light effect covering the black line that we had previously on that layer. So I'm going to select the color dodge layer now. I'm going to switch my background to my foreground, and I'm going to change the color of my foreground to black, and I'm just going to apply the black to some part of the color dodge layer where I already apply the light effect. So I'm going to do that, and I'll select the layer mask again. So I'm going to switch back to the color I had previously. So I'm doing this by hitting X on my keyboard. That's the shortcut, but if you can't remember the shortcut, you can always click on this icon here. So I'm going to put this here like so. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch this back to 100, and I'm going to make my smooth 50%, and I'm going to check the pen pressure option here, and I'm just going to start by drawing some light effect on the hair like so. All right, so the reason why I increase the smooth is so that when I'm applying my brush with my pen tool, I'm going to have smooth movement of my brush. All right, so I'm going to make a new layer, and I'll call this lights. So I'm going to click on OK for this, and I'll apply the layer mask of this layer right here, and I'll drag and drop to make a copy of it like so, and I'm going to hold on Alt, and I'm going to sample a color from here like so. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in, increase the size of my brush. Now make sure you're using the soft round brush for this. All right, my flow needs to go down to 15, and I'll turn off the pen pressure option here, and I'm just going to brush to apply. Now that's too strong, so I need to make this go down more by making it, let's say, 9. Increase the size of my brush. I'm just going to apply that like so. Okay, more go down to something around 3. So apply that like so. So on the layer, so I'm going to create a new layer now, and I'll call this dust. Okay, and I'll zoom in and select the brush tool. Make sure you're using the soft round brush. So I'm going to increase the size of my brush. I'm going to sample a color from here, and I'm just going to brush. I'm going to reduce the flow 13, and I'm going to apply the brush. Good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a color lookup to this. So I need to go to the adjustment panel here. If you can't find the adjustment panel, simply go to Windows and then you have it here. So now I'm going to select the color lookup. I'm going to use the hedge hammer option here. So I'm going to hide this and I'm going to make a gradient adjustment on top of this, and I'm going to click here, scroll down. So I already create a gradient adjustment that I'm going to use for this tutorial. So if you want to know the type of gradient adjustment that I use, so I'm going to double click here and you guys can copy the code of the gradient map that I use. So I'm going to click on OK. So this is the location for it, is 12. So I'll double click on this again, and you see the code right here, and I'm going to click OK, and then this is the location. I'll do the same thing here, double click. This is the code right here, and I'm going to hit OK, and this is the location right here, and this is the last one. This is the code right here, and I'm going to select OK, and this is the location. So if you're wondering how to add more slider like the way I have mine, simply click on any empty area of the gradient. So once I click on it, you see I have a new slider, and if you want to delete it, simply click and drag down and then it goes off. So I'm going to hit OK. So the next thing I'm going to do is to stamp visible of the layers. So I'm going to hold down the shortcut, which is Ctrl Shift Alt NE, and I'm going to hide the gradient map, and I'm going to position the color lookup behind the layer of the stamp visible layer. So I'm going to hold the stamp visible, then I'm going to make this visible. So if I hide this, you see we have this. If I make it visible, we have this. So I'm going to add a layer mask to this, and I'm going to make sure that my foreground is set to black like so, and I'm going to zoom in, select the brush tool, increase the size of my brush, and I'm just going to add the light effect back to the scene like so. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do now is to take this to camera raw. So, but before I do that, I need to stamp visible of the layers again. So I'm going to hold on Ctrl Shift Alt and E. So let's convert this to a smart object before we get to camera raw, and I'm going to go to filter, and I'm selecting the camera raw filter option here. Okay, let's just push the exposure up a little like so. For the contrast, I'm going to add more contrast just to bring out the details more. For the highlight, I'm going to push that up just to add more highlight to the light effect. So I'm going to make that go to something around, let's say 7 is fine. And for the shadow, I am going to increase that so as to make that brighter a little bit more. And for the white, I'm going to make that go down, okay, because I don't want too much white on the cloud, on the dust effect here. For the texture, I'm going to increase that just to add more texture on the character like so. So let's go straight to the curve. I'm going to reduce the curve like so, and just move this up like so, just like so. All right, add sharpen to this, just like so, just so as to bring more contrast to the textures. So I'm going to move this down, and for the orange, I'm going to increase the orange on the HSL. All right, so I'm under the color mixer now. So I'm going to increase the orange just like so, just to add more orange to the light effect here. So, and I'm going to go straight to the effect option here, and I'm going to increase the grain just to add more noise to the project, just like so. I need to go back to the HSL. I almost forgot. I'm going to add more blue to the project. All right, so I'm going to stop like so, and yeah, so I'm going to hit OK. So this is what we have now. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to add my text. So if you care to know the name of the font that I use here, it's called the Day Dots. All right, so this is it right here. So this is the name of the font, and so I'm going to change this back to let's say 13. All right, now this movie is not real. Still of watching it anyway. So I'm just going to create a new layer because I noticed I don't like this light effect around my character here.
I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. If you are not subscribed, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and remember to ring that bell so you won't miss any of my tutorials. I'll see you guys again in the next one. Peace.